What if the creature movies you missed were buried on purpose? Not because they failed, but because they crossed lines studios quietly erased. Tonight's list isn't nostalgia bait. It's a warning. These films went too far, freaked people out, and still feel dangerous decades later. Question is simple. Should they have stayed hidden? Number 12. Humanoids from the Deep, 1980. This movie doesn't knock on the door. It kicks it down, drags the furniture outside, and sets it on fire. Humanoids from the Deep is the kind of creature feature that feels like it escaped a drive-in theater by accident. On the surface, it's a coastal monster movie. Underneath, it's a mean-spirited social grenade disguised as rubber suits and slime. Set in a small fishing town, the film follows genetically altered sea creatures that crawl out of the water and turn the community upside down. But here's the thing critics didn't expect. The monsters aren't the only threat. The movie aggressively pokes at corporate greed, environmental arrogance, and the idea that science can bulldoze morality without consequences. Audiences in 1980 were not ready. Test screenings reportedly caused walkouts. Theater owners complained. Studio executives panicked. The film was recut, softened, and still ended up being labeled disturbing by critics who usually loved creature chaos. Roger Corman's name alone guaranteed grindhouse energy, but even he knew this one pushed harder than usual. What makes it unforgettable is how little it cares about comfort. The practical effects are slimy, ugly, and invasive. The atmosphere feels hostile. Even the town itself seems cursed. This isn't a fun Saturday matinee monster. It's an angry late-night VHS rental that dares you to keep watching. Financially, it barely made a dent. Culturally, it became infamous. Horror fans still argue whether it crossed the line or exposed one. That argument is exactly why it belongs here. This wasn't meant to be rediscovered. It was meant to disappear. Number 11, The Nest, 1988. If you think small creatures can't be terrifying, The Nest exists to prove you wrong and then laugh at you for doubting it. This movie takes one of the most universally hated pests on the planet and turns it into a full-scale nightmare with a serious attitude problem. The setup sounds simple: a quiet island town, a chemical company cutting corners, and roaches that suddenly stop acting like bugs and start acting like an army. But the execution is vicious. These creatures swarm, coordinate, and overwhelm in ways that feel uncomfortably plausible. That's the secret sauce. This horror hits because it feels like it could happen tomorrow. The Nest arrived at the tail end of the 1980s creature boom when audiences thought they had seen it all. They hadn't. Viewers were caught off guard by how mean-spirited the movie is. People don't get heroic deaths. They get messy ones. There's no glossy polish here, just panic, screaming, and a lot of frantic stomping that doesn't work. Critics dismissed it as cheap. Horror fans quietly embraced it. On VHS, it spread like its own infection. Video store clerks warned customers. Some refused to recommend it to anyone with a weak stomach. That reputation helped it survive long after theaters moved on. Director Terrence H. Winkless leaned hard into paranoia. Tight hallways, dark basements, close-ups that make your skin crawl. The roaches aren't just monsters. They're symbols of corporate negligence and ecological backlash. The Nest didn't make much money, but it earned something better: a legacy of discomfort. Once you've seen it, you never look at your walls the same way again. In number 10, The Deadly Spawn, 1983. This movie feels like it crawled out of someone's basement and refused to leave. The Deadly Spawn is raw, handmade, and unapologetically grotesque. It's the kind of creature feature that reminds you why horror used to feel dangerous before focus groups sanded the edges off. The story centers on a small town invaded by ravenous alien creatures that look like nightmares assembled from leftover meat and nightmares. There's no slow build. The film throws you straight into chaos. Bodies pile up. Characters panic. Logic takes a back seat to survival. What makes this film special is its DIY energy. Shot on a tiny budget by people who clearly loved monsters more than Polish, it leans into excess. The creatures are everywhere. They're fast. They're hungry. And the camera never looks away when things go bad. Audiences in the early 1980s didn't know what to make of it. Critics largely ignored it. Theaters barely booked it. But on home video, it exploded. Horror fans passed it around like contraband. Magazine writers whispered about it. Fangoria readers worshipped. The gore effects became legendary. Achieved with practical ingenuity rather than money, they still hold up because they feel tactile, wet, real, uncomfortable. Directors like Peter Jackson later cited films like this as proof you didn't need permission to create monsters. Financially, it was a blip. Creatively, it was a blueprint. The Deadly Spawn didn't care about mass appeal. It cared about delivering exactly what the title promised. This is not a movie you casually stumble into. It's one you survive. And once you do, you never forget it. Number 9. Xtro, 1982. Xtro feels less like a movie and more like something that shouldn't exist on a shelf at all. This is the kind of creature film that doesn't follow rules because it doesn't recognize them. It plays like a bad dream someone filmed before waking up in a cold sweat. The basic setup sounds almost emotional. A man disappears. Years later, he comes back changed. But from the opening minutes, you know this isn't a reunion story. It's a slow descent into alien logic where nothing behaves the way audiences expect. Scenes don't ease you in, they ambush you. What shocked viewers in 1982 wasn't just the creature element, it was the tone. Xtro jumps wildly between family drama, surreal horror, and moments that feel intentionally unsettling. Critics didn't know how to categorize it. Some called it incoherent. Others admitted it haunted them days later. That confusion became its power. Video stores reportedly kept it behind the counter because parents complained after blind rentals. Horror fans, meanwhile, spread its reputation like a secret handshake. If you knew Xtro, you were already deep into underground horror. The creature design is bizarre rather than impressive. That's the point. It doesn't look heroic or iconic. It looks wrong, unfinished, like it came from somewhere humans aren't meant to understand. Director Harry Bromley Davenport leaned into that discomfort instead of explaining anything away. Financially, Xtro struggled. Culturally, it grew stronger with age. Today, it's cited as one of the strangest alien invasion films ever released. Not because it's loud, but because it refuses to reassure you. Xtro isn't about spectacle. It's about unease, and it never lets you relax. Number 8. Society, 1989. Society starts like a glossy teen drama and ends like a full-scale betrayal of your senses. This is a movie that smiles at you for most of its runtime, then flips the table and dares you to keep watching. Set in an affluent California community, the film follows a teenager who suspects that something is very wrong with the wealthy elite around him. At first, it feels paranoid. Then, strange details pile up. People act off, conversations feel rehearsed, and the sense of isolation grows unbearable. Audiences in 1989 weren't prepared for the shift. Society saves its true identity for the finale, unleashing a creature reveal that instantly became legendary. Viewers reportedly screamed, laughed, and recoiled all at once. Critics called it outrageous. Horror fans called it genius. Director Brian Yuzna weaponized practical effects to make a statement about class and power. The creatures aren't just monsters, they're metaphors. Twisted bodies representing twisted privilege. The visuals are intentionally excessive, pushing past good taste into something unforgettable. The film barely made noise in theaters. Home video changed everything. Midnight screenings turned it into a cult phenomenon. People brought friends just to watch their reactions during the final act. That moment alone secured its place in horror history. Society didn't just shock audiences, it exposed them. The laughter dies quickly when you realize what the film is really saying. This isn't just body horror, it's social horror. Once you've seen it, you understand why it was never meant for mainstream comfort. Number 7. From Beyond, 1986. From Beyond is what happens when imagination is given too much freedom and absolutely no breaks. Inspired by classic cosmic horror, this film doesn't aim to scare politely. It wants to overwhelm you. The story centers on scientists experimenting with a machine that stimulates parts of the human brain normally left untouched. When activated, it opens the door to another dimension. What comes through is not friendly, and neither are the changes it triggers in the human body. Audiences expecting a standard monster movie were blindsided. From Beyond is soaked in atmosphere, glowing lights, pulsing sound design, creatures that feel more biological than supernatural. The visuals crawl under your skin rather than jump out at you. Director Stuart Gordon doubled down on practical effects, creating monsters that feel wet, alive, and invasive. Critics were split. Some praised its commitment, others accused it of excess. Horror fans didn't care. They embraced it immediately. The film struggled at the box office but exploded on VHS. It became a staple of late-night horror marathons. Fangoria magazine coverage helped cement its reputation as a must-see experience for anyone brave enough. What makes From Beyond endure is its refusal to explain everything. The other dimension isn't mapped. The creatures aren't categorized. You're dropped into chaos and left to process it yourself. This movie doesn't ask if you're ready. It assumes you're not, and it goes there anyway. Number 6. Cue the Winged Serpent, 1982. This movie should not work. On paper, it sounds ridiculous. A giant flying creature nesting in New York City. But Cue the Winged Serpent doesn't play like a joke. It plays like a grimy urban nightmare filmed through cracked concrete and paranoia. Released at a time when New York was portrayed as dangerous, decaying, and lawless, the film leans into that mood hard. The creature isn't just terrorizing the city. It feels like the city summoned it. Crime scenes pile up. Authorities panic. Nobody's in control. What sets Q apart is its perspective. This isn't told through heroic scientists or fearless soldiers. It's told through low-level criminals, exhausted detectives, and people already on the edge. The monster almost feels secondary to the chaos of the city itself. Audiences in the early 1980s didn't know what to make of it. Critics were split. Some mocked the effects, others praised the tension. Horror fans latched onto its strange energy. The creature design was unsettling, but the atmosphere was the real threat. Director Larry Cohen famously shot scenes guerrilla style, capturing real city energy without permits. That rawness bleeds into every frame. Sirens wail, streets feel alive. The monster feels like just another problem New York has to survive. Financially modest but culturally sticky, Q gained respect over time. Modern viewers recognize it as a unique blend of crime film and creature horror. It's not polished, it's aggressive, and it feels dangerous in a way studio monsters rarely do. This isn't a fantasy monster, it's an urban legend with wings. Number 5. Leviathan, 1989. Leviathan arrived riding the wave of underwater horror and decided to make the water even darker. Set in a deep-sea mining operation, the film taps into one of humanity's oldest fears, being trapped where escape is impossible. The setup is classic. A crew discovers something they shouldn't, a strange substance, a body that doesn't behave like a body should. Soon, the isolation turns deadly. What follows is a slow breakdown of trust as the creature reveals itself piece by piece. Audiences compared it to other underwater horrors of the era, but Leviathan distinguished itself through brutality. The creature doesn't just kill, it absorbs, it mutates. It turns victims into something else. That transformation element disturbed viewers more than jump scares ever could. Critics were lukewarm, calling it derivative. Horror fans ignored that criticism. On home video, Leviathan found its audience. The practical effects were praised for their grotesque creativity. The creature felt physical, heavy, real. The film leaned into body horror in ways mainstream audiences weren't comfortable with at the time. That discomfort is exactly why it survived. Late-night cable airings helped cement its cult status. Leviathan didn't redefine the genre, but it pushed it into darker waters. It reminded viewers that the ocean is still unexplored, still hostile, and still capable of producing nightmares. This isn't fear of the unknown. It's fear of what happens when the unknown fights back. Number 4. DeepStar Six, 1989. DeepStar Six doesn't waste time pretending things will be okay. From the moment it starts, the film locks you underwater and throws away the key. Set in a military research base on the ocean floor, the movie taps into claustrophobia like a weapon. Narrow corridors, flickering lights, metal walls pressing in, and something moving outside that doesn't belong there. The creature reveal is slow, but the tension is relentless. Characters argue, mistakes pile up, pressure builds, literally and emotionally. When the monster finally emerges, it feels earned and mean. Audiences in 1989 were divided. Some wanted spectacle, others appreciated the restraint. Critics didn't give it much love, but viewers who discovered it later recognized its strengths. The fear comes from environment first, creature second. Director Sean S. Cunningham leaned into suspense rather than excess. The underwater setting does most of the work. The creature feels like an extension of the environment itself, something ancient, territorial, and very unhappy. The film didn't dominate theaters, but it performed respectably. Its real life came later through rentals and cable. Horror fans revisited it and appreciated its pacing and atmosphere. DeepStar Six proves you don't need constant chaos to terrify. Sometimes all you need is depth, darkness, and the knowledge that help is very far away. And once something down there notices you, it's already too late. Number 3. Ticks, 1993. Ticks looks like a disposable creature movie until it bites you and refuses to let go. What starts as a teen survival setup in the woods quickly mutates into one of the nastiest nature run-amok films of the 1990s. The premise is deceptively simple. A group of troubled teens are sent into the forest for a rehabilitation program. Bad idea number 1. Bad idea number 2 involves toxic waste dumped nearby, causing ticks to grow to grotesque, aggressive sizes. Once the creatures appear, the movie stops pretending it's a moral lesson and turns into pure panic. Audiences underestimated this film hard. Released during an era dominated by slick studio horror, Ticks leaned into grime. The forest feels unsafe. Every tree feels like a hiding place. The creatures don't jump out for cheap scares. They crawl, slowly, patiently, and that's worse. Critics shrugged it off, but viewers remembered it, especially anyone who saw it too young. The practical effects are uncomfortably detailed. Veins, mandibles, movement that feels wrong. The film doesn't flinch when characters die, and it doesn't reward bad decisions with mercy. What gives Ticks its cult reputation is commitment. It doesn't soften its edge. It doesn't wink at the audience. It wants you uncomfortable. Director Tony Randall treated the creatures seriously, which makes the fear stick. On video and late-night TV, it gained traction. Horror fans praised its effects and mean streak. It became one of those movies people warn you about rather than recommend. Ticks isn't about bugs. It's about losing control in a place where nature doesn't care who you are. Once it gets under your skin, it stays there. Number 2. Razorback, 1984. Razorback doesn't feel like a creature movie. It feels like a curse. Set in the Australian outback, this film uses landscape as a weapon, turning open space into something just as terrifying as confinement. The story centers on a massive wild boar terrorizing rural communities. But the animal itself isn't the whole point. The real horror is isolation, dust storms, endless horizons, silence broken only by violence. Audiences expecting a straightforward monster hunt were shocked. Razorback is slow, atmospheric, almost hypnotic. Director Russell Mulcahy infused the film with surreal imagery and an uneasy tone that lingers long after the credits roll. Critics at the time didn't know what to do with it. Some praised its visuals, others found it confusing. Horror fans eventually caught on. This wasn't about jump scares. It was about dread. The boar appears sparingly, which makes its presence more powerful. When it strikes, it's brutal and sudden. The practical effects were impressive for the time, but it's the sound design and cinematography that elevate the film. Financially, Razorback performed modestly. Culturally, it aged like a nightmare. Modern viewers rediscovered it as an early example of elevated creature horror before the term existed. This movie doesn't rush you, it stalks you, and by the time you realize what kind of film it is, you're already trapped in its world. Razorback proves that sometimes the scariest monster is the land itself, watching patiently. Number 1. The Kindred 1987. The Kindred is the movie people don't warn you about. They hesitate. Then they say nothing, because explaining it feels like spoiling something you're not sure should be spoiled. This film blends creature horror with mad science and family secrets in a way that feels deeply wrong. The story follows a man uncovering the horrifying legacy of his mother's experiments. What he finds isn't just a monster, it's a mistake that never should have lived. Audiences in 1987 weren't ready. The pacing is strange, the tone is bleak, and the creature design is genuinely disturbing. This isn't a cool monster. It's pitiful, angry, trapped. That makes it harder to watch. Critics largely ignored it. Some called it ugly. Horror fans leaned in. On home video, it developed a reputation as one of the most unsettling late 1980s creature films. Not because of gore alone, but because of emotional discomfort. The film explores themes of control, obsession, and consequences. The monster isn't rampaging randomly. It exists because someone refused to stop. That guilt hangs over every scene. The practical effects are impressive, but they're used sparingly. The film relies more on atmosphere and revelation. When the truth is fully exposed, it hits like a punch to the chest. The Kindred never became mainstream, and that's fitting. It doesn't want a wide audience. It wants viewers who can handle sitting with discomfort. This isn't a monster movie you enjoy, it's one you endure. So now the real question is this: were these creature features buried because they failed, or because they succeeded a little too well? Which one crossed the line for you, and which deserves a second look today? Drop your takes in the comments and don't hold back, because if these films still make people uncomfortable decades later, maybe they were never the problem. Maybe we are.